Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of the Real Talk webinar. I'm your host, Nelson Raphael, and I am joined by our president, Benjamin Tomlinson. Today, we have two lovely guests here to talk about motherhood in the modern era. So, as you know, Real Talk webinar is an event that is powered by the Emerging 100 of North Metro Atlanta. I serve as the Economic Empowerment Chair and as the part-time host of these segments that bring you these real hard-hitting topics month to month. With that being said, I think you understand that we are here to talk about motherhood in the modern era. I will introduce you to these panelists. We'll engage in a discussion and we'll close out and talk about next steps. So welcome. In terms of the purpose of our event today, we're going to talk about the intersection of motherhood, career, education, and health and wellness. I'm sure our two guests have plenty of lived experiences to talk about and examples to show how they have navigated those four different topics throughout their lives. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jasmine Jones and Ashley Nealy. Jasmine, could you give us a few words about yourself?
Yes, thank you all for having me here today. I am a clinical pharmacy specialist and I specialize in taking care of patients who have severe pain and other conditions and illnesses, and I take care of them with a team of physicians and nurses throughout the trajectory of their disease and sometimes into their hospice transition. And so I'm very proud of that work, what I get to do and the time I get to spend with patients and their families. But more importantly, I am a wife. I've been married for 20 years and a mother. My husband and I have two teenage children. My son is now 18, so actually an adult, and my daughter is 14. And so I am proud of my ability to kind of manage my home life as a wife and a mother and my professional career. And I've done that while also navigating a very personal health journey. I am a two-time cancer survivor, surviving Hodgkin's lymphoma twice. So I think that gives me a very unique perspective on motherhood and career, and I appreciate you all inviting me here to participate in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. We love the fact that you are a two-time survivor, real resilience, and I know that is a very, very difficult ailment to work through, but we are glad you were here with us and here to share your story. Ashley, would you give us some words about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Ashley Nealy, and right now I serve as the Associate Vice President of Client Experience and Solutions at Kennesaw State University, which may not mean anything to you, but pretty much I work in University Information Technology Services, where I lead a team responsible for all customer support. So that includes the service desk, the person you might call if you get some technical problems while you're on campus. That's also field support. So that's helping all of our colleges and departments on campus in person. And it's also our desktop and AV engineering. So pretty much anything that you need to connect to on campus, whether you need help with something or even the AV and engineering that you see in the classrooms that you go to, the screens are responsible for a team who is responsible for making sure that all of that works and that you know who to call when it doesn't work. So we pretty much are responsible for the entire experience that you have on campus, whether you are a student, a visitor, faculty, or staff person. If you use technology in some way on campus, my team is there to support you. And like Jasmine, I am a mom. I'm a little bit of a newer mom than her. So my son is technically today 364 days old, which means his birthday is on Mother's Day. So he was going to be approaching one. So for a lot of these questions, I'm going to be learning from Jasmine because I haven't reached that milestone yet where he's actually listening to me. But I'm excited for this conversation and how I've been navigating my first year of motherhood as a working professional. I'm coming off of several paid parental leaves and how I've been navigating that journey. So thanks for having me today.
Congratulations on beginning your journey of motherhood. I know that is a very, very big undertaking. And also, to say the least, I think we have Kennesaw State alumnus, as well as you yourself are alumna. So if I'm not mistaken, you're also on the alumni board. So I know you give back in many ways outside of just your day-to-day job. So definitely want to applaud you for all the things that you do for Kennesaw State. So let's go ahead and transition into our panel discussion. So I'd like to go ahead and pose the first question, and then after that, if you would like to pick up the second question, we'll go to the real topic as well. How's that sound?
Nelson, we're losing you on audio.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay. I'd like to pose you a first question and then pass it on to you for the second question, Ben. Does that sound like a good plan?
That sounds wonderful. Let's get into it.
All right. Now, Jasmine, I'd like to ask you this question. When you think about the word mother alongside the word professional, which one do you reach for first when someone asks who you are, and has that answer changed over time?
Yes, the answer has definitely changed. So I am a proud rattler. I got my degree in pharmacy at Florida A&M University, and so whenever I used to originally present myself or introduce myself, it was always with that. I'm a proud rattler, where I received my degree and wanted to tell everyone about all of the work, research I did as a student and what I was doing early in my career. And over time, I realized that I was more proud of what I was doing at home with my children, and I really wanted to kind of let people see that part of my identity first. Not that I wasn't proud of my professional work, but I felt like what I was doing at home was just more valuable to me and what I really wanted to share. So that has changed over time. And I also think it does change depending on what setting I'm in. So I'll be honest, if it's a professional networking, I'm probably not going to lead with I'm the mom, right? So I think that, I've learned to do that better, understanding who I'm speaking with and what may be most important in that conversation at the time. But if I had to choose, I would definitely choose motherhood first.
Awesome. And so I think I want to ask, at what point did that really shift for you? Because you started with collegiate spirit, pretty strong collegiate spirit. You talked about your experience in undergraduate research and what attributed to your career path. But then there was a very interesting paradigm shift you highlighted where you were proud of what you did with your children at home, the nurturing, the child rearing. What was it that kind of clicked that switch for you?
I think over time I realized how valuable um, the work I was doing at home as a mother and a wife and the skills I was learning were actually really translatable professionally and gave me, a way to distinguish myself from some of my colleagues. And I was realizing that there were times I was making decisions or my decisions might be informed from different, scenarios and things I had to deal with as a mother. And so I started to want to try to share that, not as a way to brag about it, but just to let people know that, I realize now that my decision making is different and my perspective is different based on the experiences I'm having as a mother. And so I don't think I need to be afraid to share that with people. And I think that, again, it just brought this feeling of me being very genuine in conversations, if I could talk about that in relationship to my career.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing. Ben, would you like to take the next question?
Yeah, definitely. And this is actually a great segue from Nelson's first question. I would address this to both of you. And if I could add a bit of context here. So I'm also married, and my wife is also a mom. We have two wonderful, rowdy toddler boys, 4 and 6 years old. And so I wanted to kind of expound on what Ashley said earlier about the different stages of motherhood, right? Excuse me. So Jasmine, you obviously your children are much older. They're emerging into young adults. Ashley, you've experienced exactly 364 days of motherhood, and my wife has experienced 4 to 6 years. Right, my sisters are mothers, and of course, I have my own mom to think about. My question stems from that experience: is that understanding that Black motherhood, in particular, it carries a very heavy but also profound history, right? And so, how has understanding that legacy, right? When you think of the mothers in your lives, whether it's your aunts, your grandmothers, your own mothers, your sisters, your cousins, and yourselves, how has that legacy shaped how you are intentional about being the mother that you are today? And either of you can answer that.
Hmm,
So you go ahead.
okay. Yeah, so I think that is what goes in the back of my head every day when I'm raising my son, because the different times that we're living in, that it gets really heavy a lot of times. So what I like to lean on is just looking at my family history, even my son's father's family history, and just realizing what they came from. So my dad is a big historian, so he is the ancestry person for no matter what side of the family you're on.
Love
So
that.
yes, I'm able to go back and see that my son has grandparents that were going to college, when that wasn't popular. They were joining professional organizations when it wasn't popular.
Mhm.
They were doing things no matter the backdrop of what we had to face in this country. And I want him to know that that's his legacy, and that's what I kind of instill in him, that we're going to go through hard times. It's unfortunate. That's the way America is and how everything's set up. But that you come from a lineage that is used to this and that has excelled despite of that. And that's why I try to lead every day. It's just making sure that he knows where he comes from, and that even in the midst of being raised in times that are difficult, that you can still accomplish great things, and that you're paying it forward for the next generations to come too. So our grandparents did things so that we can have the life that we're enjoying. Our parents did things so that we could have the life that we're enjoying, and I'm trying to do the same thing for him, so that when he looks back in the history and sees when he grew up, that it may not even matter to him, because he realized that he was still able to persist and carry on that Black legacy that we're trying to live.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Jasmine, you have anything to add?
Um, I would say, my style of motherhood, I definitely have made it a hybrid of what I received from my mother and what I saw in my grandparents.
Mm.
And we very much, I could see evolution, let's say, like from my grandparents. So one of my grandmothers was a hairstylist. She owned her own
Wow.
hair, a beauty shop for like 50 something years. So she was an
Wow.
entrepreneur. My other grandmother was what you call a domestic, if you all are familiar with that. So both of them were from the South, moved to the North during the like Great Migration, but took very different paths.
Mm.
But both of them were very, very involved with their children's lives and at home. And I used to kind of feel like, how did they do that? Right. And so I found myself asking my mother a lot of questions when I had my kids about how did you do it? As my mother's, went to college, right? And so then she was a professor. So I was asking her how she was balancing things and what she remembered about seeing her mother, and what she would do. And I, tried to pull bits and pieces from the story she was telling me, to figure out how I was going to do it for myself. And I think that I'm probably not different from a lot of Black women who have these very role models that quite often don't look exactly like what we're doing now. If we're now in Fortune 500 companies or,
Mm-hmm.
leaders in healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a parent who really did that, right? So I had to take these bits and pieces, but I think that that helped me, and just seeing what can be done, and taking those the elements of the cooking and the storytelling. A lot of that's what I remember from my mother and grandmother, and so I have tried to incorporate that a lot with my children, because those stories are the things I remember in good and bad times, and actually was the lessons they were teaching me. And so I think that's what I take the most from those role models in parenting and motherhood. And then how to balance career, I think I've probably learned that more from talking to my friends that we're in together doing this, as we
Yeah.
go. And it's much different than what we kind of saw our mothers and grandmothers do.
Yeah.
So it definitely sounds like there's a little bit of figure it out as you go, but you have a nice village around you that you
Mm-hmm.
guys are kind of experiencing the same things and are able to bounce ideas off of each other, somewhat like a sounding board. But also at the same time, it's looking back towards your ancestral roots to understand what is already within, what skills, what experiences that they already have, that you know your lineage is already capable of either surmounting these obstacles and or moving past these difficulties. So it's almost realizing what's already internalized, whether by genes or by environment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. We start to talk about one, how our environment starts to affect us, right? Nature versus nurture. And let's talk about how you show up differently, how there are versions of you depending on the environment you're in. My question is to the both of you, there's a version of yourself you bring to work and a version you bring home. How much overlap is there? And where do you protect the boundary?
It's a good one.
Mhm. I can start. So there's definitely a version, and I think we all have different representatives in different places. So I'm not going to say that I don't bring a representative to work. And I think some of that is also cultural. I know I'm always thinking about not trying to be the one that is always unhappy or maybe too strong in their communication style, right? I think that's something that we as African American women, have to deal with sometimes. And not that I water myself down,
Yeah.
but there's certain ways that I can be animated at home with my children when I'm
Right.
giving them their directives that I know I need to maybe not do it the same way,
Right.
and their colleagues, right? And I do think that I have caught myself sometimes speaking in my mom voice, and I'm like, right?
Yeah.
And it's happened more because now, I'm more middle age, right? And I'm
Mhm.
working with Gen X, or not Gen X, but Gen Z, right?
Mhm.
And I love them, and so I'm finding that, they're getting closer and closer to my children's ages. So I just have to catch
Yeah.
myself and realize that you
Yeah.
respect them as adults,
Right.
and peers. And I try to really bring my mentor, I would say, self to work even more now,
Mhm.
and not so much the mother, when I'm in the work setting.
Ashley, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll kind of tell a story because I think my journey to this question is a little interesting. So while I was on maternity leave, I actually ended up quitting my job and getting a new job. There is still overlap with that. So
Yeah.
I was very afraid to tell my new job that I was just getting off of paid parental leave, because I actually cut it off 3 weeks short before I started the job. And I was terrified to tell them I was a mom just because of just that's his own personal biases and hearing,
Right.
that might affect me getting the job because does she
Right.
need more time? Is she ready to return back to work? He hasn't been working since May and it's now
Right.
August or September. So it took me a long time to even confess that I had a child at work because I just didn't want anyone to
Mm.
think I wasn't ready to do anything and I have a newborn at home. So I was really afraid about bringing that to everyone's attention. I finally did confide in my direct reports and told them, and they were like, wow, that's a lot of transition. Started a new
Yeah.
job, have a new baby. And so kind of everything started to make sense. But I didn't want, if my performance was a little shaky because I'm starting a brand new role, for that to be detracting, oh, because she's a mom. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And I ended up having to tell my supervisor that I had a child because since I became a state employee, I actually qualified for another paid parental leave. And that was really important to me because
There
I
you
was
go.
like, I'll actually get another 6 weeks that I can spend with my son, even though he's a little bit older now. I realized that my identity as a mom, I'm never going to get this precious time again. So I ended up having to tell him, and he was super supportive. He kept asking, when does it start? Do you need anything from me to support you? So it's almost like that I kind of self inflicted a pain on myself that I didn't have to about being afraid to confess that I was a mom when I could
Mm.
have just been open with it up front. But that was something that just came with learning and everything just being in a new environment. So now they asked me about the kid. They asked how paid parental leave was going. I was just working just 1 day a week. And then, I even made the joke that, being a, technically not a stay at home mom, but being at home is a harder job than going to work. That's actually easier for me to these things. And they agreed. So that was been interesting. So now when I talk to my direct reports and have meetings, they ask me about my son first. So I'm able to lean into that. I didn't see more. They asked, to see what milestones he's at. So it's been able to make me more comfortable by being actually open about where I am in motherhood.
Mm. No, that's really powerful. And I wanted to kind of bounce back to what Jasmine was saying, and I'll circle back to you, Ashley. Jasmine, you really kind of described like having certain avatars. I think you use the word representatives, but when my wife and I talk, we really talk about those avatars of like there is the mom voice at home, and again, different children's age matter as well of what type of parent in general that you're going to be. All right, toddlers, like, it's a whole different ball game than teens, tweens, whatever, and versus newborns. As Ashley said earlier, like he's not even listening to her at this point. Like, he's a beautiful infant, and there's not much interaction going on in terms of a toddler doing backflips off the couch, right? So, um, my question, kind of reverbing on that, is: have you identified different avatars, right? Like, do you wake up and kind of say, all right, who am I gonna, which one do I need to switch on today? And like, I have to go to this conference today, so let me actually, you know, switch on that dial, right? And it kind of circles back to what Ashley was saying, where when she finally opened up about motherhood, it actually ended up creating a bit of a positive impact for her and relieving some pressure. So that question is, how does motherhood give you that edge when you're in when you're in the workplace, right? Have you found moments where, if you are changing your avatars, if you will, and you are, you know, informing people that this is my experience and I am who I am, how is that giving you an edge?
Um, I think the edge is that most. So the beauty of it is everybody has a mom.
Yeah,
Everybody has
exactly.
different
Right.
relationships with
Yeah,
their mom.
exactly.
But for the most part, people know my mom was probably the boss. She was a boss, and they
Yeah.
understand probably how much their mother was doing, right? So, like when you
Hmm.
told your staff, Ashley, like they were like, "Oh yeah, I know, I remember mom." They probably
Yeah.
was, my mom did this, and I know I did this to
Yeah.
my mom. I
Hmm.
know what
Hmm.
that was like, right? So, I think the edge is that when people realize what you are balancing or have been balancing, I think there could be a little bit more respect there.
Hmm.
Not by everybody, but I think a lot of people do respect their mothers. And I know that's a very generalized statement, but I
Hmm.
think by and large, most people have respect. And so when you say, I am a mother, and then they look and they're like, and wow,
Gotta
and she
straighten up. You gotta
so
tighten up.
to tighten up, but like she is also not dropping any balls here if
Yeah.
you're doing your work, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the edge that they're like,
On all
man,
cylinders.
she can do this and she's a mom. Okay,
Mm.
she's legit. And I need to step up and meet whatever expectations she has of me if they're a subordinate or something to me because
Mhm, mhm.
she's not asking for anything more accommodations. So let me do what I need to do as well. Or that's one thing. And then I think the other is other moms, I hope, see me
Mhm.
as a role model for them.
Yeah.
Um, and not just what I do, but also, and we might get into this later, have been accommodations I've asked for and things I've changed in my working style through the years to accommodate, like you said, those different time periods. There were things that maybe needed more time when they were younger, needed to be home to pick them up, after
Yeah.
school versus what they see me now being able to do as my children age. And
Mhm.
that's, again, I think a part of the mentorship is me showing them that motherhood in your professional career, they also change and you give and take to both of them at different times.
Mm. Well said.
That's
Actually,
wonderful. And in the sense of one, the respect of mothers, I think that's very universal. I think that's one, a baseline that we establish not just as professionals, but as people, because we look at the matriarchs in our community for a lot of guidance, right? And it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it a silent fortitude because everyone has a very different leadership style. However, in terms of that solemn respect we have for mothers, especially in a professional sense, as you were saying, we're not dropping any balls, but didn't realize the capabilities and the limits of said capabilities when certain things were needed to be prioritized for their family. Those are the kinds of things that we as men, we don't always have that kind of visibility into. We don't
mhm.
have that perspective. And so we look towards the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunts, and women in our community to garner that kind of perspective. Now, with that being said, Jasmine, there was something that you said earlier that is a great segue into the next question. And it was talking about how you show up at work, going back to somewhat the avatars and the representatives, but in terms of how strong you may convey your ideas, how animated you may be in your discussions. And I wanted to ask, Black women are often expected to be strong for everyone around them. But, and this is at work and at home, but how do you guard against that expectation becoming a burden your children absorb too?
Mm. Um, so, we can easily burn out. And that's, kind of a buzz right now, but it's a real thing.
It is. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the worst case scenario where you give so much at work and you drain yourself that
Mhm.
when you come home, you don't have the energy for them.
Mm. Yeah.
Or they may get the worst of you because you've been trying to hold in some frustration
Mhm. Yeah.
and anger, and you didn't have a proper way to dispose of that or process it.
Mm.
I'm sorry, say the question one more time.
No worries, no worries. So you got the first context. The second part is how do you guard against the
Yes,
expectation?
what's your solution to that,
Yep.
right?
Right.
So That can look different depending on what you're experiencing at work. But, I'm definitely a firm proponent for speaking to therapists or
Hmm.
counselors and or a life coach. So one great benefit we have at our health system is we receive 12 free sessions of therapy and 12 free sessions with a life coach. Either or, you can use it. And I've learned the difference
Yeah,
over
yeah, there's a
time,
difference.
like processing emotions and things
Hmm.
like that with your therapist and a lot of past experiences so that they're not, informing your behavior in the
Yeah,
current versus coaching is like sometimes you need to have a discussion about if that's the right place for you at that
yeah,
time
yeah.
because of the level of stress maybe this job or this role is causing for you and you want to have a safe space to go and kind of download that information. And so I think that, yes, we can talk to our friends, we can talk to our spouses, but again, that boundary needs to be there. Like your spouse is not supposed to be your therapist and your coach
Yeah.
necessarily either, right? That's not what you want to put
Yeah.
that all on them or your children, right?
Hmm.
So I think having some safe spaces, not saying you can't talk to friends, but that are more professionals who are trained to deal with these difficult questions and help you process that can be really helpful. And hopefully, you have those resources available to you.
Did you want to add to that, Ashley?
Yeah, and I guess I'll kind of give a recent example. Whenever I got the notice for my, I guess it's technically third paid parental leave with the new job, one of the things that they put in the paid parental leave notice, which I didn't notice before, was that you are not required to check email or do anything while you are on leave. And I said, okay, great. I'm going to take that to heart because that's hard for me.
Yeah.
um, especially said coming as a new leader over a team of about 90 people are
Yeah.
going to expect things from you. So I decided to
Yeah.
do intermittently instead of just be gone for 6 weeks straight. I didn't want to start my new job over again when I got back.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
worked 1 day a week, but it was known that I am not going to be checking my email during this time and that I
Hmm.
needed to be full hands on with my son during that time. And even though my role is technically 24/7, which if so an emergency happens, feel free to call me. But I had to learn that because I am now commuting into the office, which is new for me. I was remote for 15 years, but it's transition. Everything's
Hmm.
transition.
Hmm.
That I still need to be able to have energy when I came home for my son. It didn't dawn on me that the only time you really spend with your son is right after you give birth, in
Hmm.
uninterrupted time, and then after that, you're lucky to see them awake even for 8 hours a day because of going to school and then your own career if you're not able to stay at home. So I had to learn how to kind of have those boundaries in place so that I can also show up for my son. I don't think it's fair, even though it's the reality that we live in, and especially in America, that I have to give my all to work, and then my son might get the shortchange of me because I'm really tired or still dealing with an issue that happened earlier that day, especially in the tech world. So I know my answer might change in 5 years, or like when I'm like Jasmine and my son's 18, it might
Hmm.
change. But right now, I'm trying to protect that time. But I know that's going to, the different avatars, different stages of life might change.
Hmm.
But I've been trying to just really lean in into how can I be present for my son as much as I'm present for my work and all the other extracurricular volunteer activities that I do too.
I want to
Yeah.
commend you for doing that. I have so many friends and colleagues who will not turn notifications off, right? They're just away. And I'm one that is a do not disturb at about 5:30. Like then people know only if it's really, really important should you probably contact her. So and that's
Hmm.
you have to set that expectation with people. I just wanted to give also a personal example. So, after the second cancer treatment cycle and process I went through, I was extremely exhausted, but I
Hmm.
wanted to go back to work.
Yeah.
And so I did something similar to what you said. I was on intermittent FMLA and I gradually increased my way back up. I started with like 2 days a week, did that for several weeks, then 3 days, 4 days. And I really appreciated my manager even telling me that was an option because some people
Hmm.
won't tell you that. They think you just got to go back full
Yeah. Just
force.
go from 1 to 10
Yeah, so
immediately.
that was really good to graduate back into my
Hmm.
full-time position. But
Yeah.
even at that point, I decided not to do a full 40 hours a week. So this is not, I think, available to everyone, but at least at our organization, you can do variations of full-time and then even
Mm.
part-time. So I actually did like, I think I was only doing 32 hours a week, which was really just one less day a week, but it made
Yeah.
a huge difference in me
Yeah.
having some downtime when the kids were at school. My husband
Yeah.
was at work, so I
Yeah.
literally was at home by myself and I could
That's
just
good.
rest.
There you go.
Now, obviously, that was, a trade-off financially, because one day a week can equal
Can
quite a
add
bit,
up. Yeah.
depending on your profession. But that was a decision that my spouse and I made, and I did that for several years. And I do think that that had a huge impact on my energy conservation and my ability to do
Wow.
self-care on that day off. And then sometimes spending some time volunteering at my child's school. So I'm glad that I had that opportunity to just carve a little bit more time for myself and for my family, but not completely abandoning my family financially by like, I'm not working at all anymore. I was able to find some balance there.
Hmm.
So that's lovely. If you don't mind, Ben, I'd like to interject because these
Yeah.
are great.
Yeah. I had one too. I'll hold on to it. Go ahead.
So you guys have really just educated me in terms of kind of becoming or going further in my career and also knowing how to show up for my partner while I'm not married like Ben. Um,
Not yet.
Goal is, yes, the goal is to move forward and grow my relationship to the point of where I do marry my partner, but being able to show up for your partner and your partner feeling comfortable
Yes.
enough to set boundaries so
Yes.
that they can, one, get the necessary rest to
Hmm.
recover in certain situations, but also show up as their best self, right? I think that's a unifying theme between the two of you guys. Showing up as your best self, but giving yourself the time to recover so that you can actually pour back into the glass that is you, right?
Love that.
Then what were you going to add?
You took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to dive into that and like what support do they get? What support do you get from your spouse, from your respective partners? Because I'm also learning, like listening to what Jasmine just said. Like I was learning, I am learning continuously how I can show up for my wife. When we were in couples therapy, just a quick aside, we've been in couples therapy for a while. We actually graduated from couples therapy. Our therapist said, "Don't call me anymore. Y'all are y'all are good for now." But she
Okay.
did hint at the fact that this is just one phase of our marriage. We've only been married for a year. And in fact, in 2 weeks, we celebrate our 1 year anniversary. And so when we have more children, for example, there will be a new version of my wife that will then experience because she's never had 3 children before. And then if we have more, she will never have experienced that. And then maybe when we're reach into our 40s, that is a new stage. So what our therapist was getting at is my support looks different. And so I'm having to constantly shift. Okay, what can I do? And mind you, I'm an engineer. Nelson is too. So I am very big on like, what are the requirements? What's the mission? What is the task? I need to know so that I am on par. But it don't work like that in the real world. It's not always black and white. And so I literally have to be on constant guard. So bringing it back, what support, like, aren't like kind of outline what that looks like do you receive from your respective partners? Jasmine, you mentioned your husband, and Ashley, whatever that support in village looks like, what support do you actually receive from those who are more close to home?
Yeah. So I have a pretty, I would say, I don't want to say big, but I lean heavy in my support system. So
Hmm.
my partner and I, he's fortunate to be off on Mondays, so that's one less day that we have to worry about childcare.
I love that.
But I would say both of us rely on my mom heavily. So I tell my mom I was jealous of her because she was actually able to be a stay-at-home mom since 1999. I'm like, I miss it. But that also means that she helped raise all of us, including my nieces and nephew, and now helping raise my son.
Wow.
But the benefit of that, because my parents live about 90 minutes away, when they're up here to help us out, they're here to stay for pretty much that week. So that is
Mm.
literally the only reason I'm able to have such a good support system and be able to kind of have that flexibility that I do have with working so far from where I live. I don't have to worry about trying to rush to get to daycare before it closes because with Atlanta
Hmm.
traffic, I'd probably be paying a late fee every day because of the way it's set up and where I live in relation to where my job is currently.
Mm.
And just not being afraid to ask for help. I laugh and say that there's not a manual written for motherhood, even though there is.
Yeah.
But I'm able to learn from my mom to figure out what the next step is. She's able to guide me. She's able to help me if I'm home, getting home late because I had to go to a meeting after work and getting my son down. So I said both of us actually lean heavily on our support system, and I'm fortunate to
Hmm.
have that because I know that's a privilege to be able to even have that type of support now. And even like I said, saving money, the financial burden I know of daycare is big, which I will have to gear it for eventually.
That's
But
tough.
having that support system is very real. And then I had to also learn not to be afraid to ask my friends for help. I am a person that tries to guard and act like I can do it all, but there's sometimes where I need a friend to watch my son for me, or I need a friend to help run an errand for me if my partner or if my parents aren't around. So I had to just kind of learn to let go of that guard, and that there are people that are willing to do that for you. And I had to remember I had to do that for my friends too. I've had to watch it, one of their children before. And just remember that's all reciprocal, and that it really takes a village to raise a child.
It does. And actually, there's a colloquialism amongst, I guess, our millennial. I'm a millennial technically, by the way, but amongst our age group, is checking on your strong friends, right?
Yes.
It's a known tweet, it's a known thing on Instagram, wherever. But it really is it's just hard to ask for help. It is something that we all struggle with. We fight with it, but I can 100% like empathize with that. I literally am going through that with one of my great friends, and he actually officiated my wedding. And so since then, we have formed a very solid relationship where we skip over that quid pro quo. Like, it's not like that. It's simply, I show up for you simply because I want to. I love you, and I'm here for you. There is no, well, I watched your kid last weekend, so you need to. No, it doesn't work like that. We are both very strong men, strong leaders in our respective industries, and we deserve the time, right? He's also married. And he also has a newborn, so his experience is different. He's coming to me for like, yo, Benji, what? I need some advice, man. How do you go through it? How do you navigate it? And so, like, it's a beautiful exchange. I just want to add that comment there of like, sometimes we really have to push ourselves to ask for that help, because you never know how hard your friends will go for you.
And I have a couple of things. So I'm also married to an engineer, so
love that.
That get thrown around.
Yeah.
Very analytical. And so I think one way that I've leveraged that actually is we make a lot of decisions. I forget how many. I've read a book or heard a podcast about how many.
Yeah, there's a lot, thousands, I believe.
Right, like we are constantly making these decisions, right? And so I started trying to delegate as many decisions to him, because he's so analytical, and he's going to create, look at all the data and give me pie charts on why he thinks one opinion is better than the other, right? So I started saying, Jasmine, you don't have to make all the decisions, even down to like, as you are going to start thinking about schools, or you probably have to decide what preschool. In the beginning, I did all of that. I felt like it was my responsibility. I'm the mother. I have to make all really, really hard, difficult. What pediatrician, and I don't know that I allowed him in. And he probably thought maybe I will do it better anyway, because I'm in healthcare, let's say, right? And it's my thing. But I really say, like, be there to help with those difficult decisions when you see your wife might be struggling, and even say, hey, I can help you with this. Because again, like, you reach out to your strong friends, like, check in on your wife, because she's probably trying to make a bunch of decisions that maybe she's not even asking you to help out with. I found myself doing that. And then just down to the traditional roles, we started separate, like, you gonna cook 2 meals a week. I'm not cooking all the meals, and looking basic chores around the house. Like, I grew up with a dad who always took the trash out. He did this thing, he did, so looking at, is that really how we want to set up our lifestyle? Or do we want to have a little bit more sharing of these roles? That will offload a lot. Off of
You're a team. You're a team.
Yeah, right. And looking at that. But again, I didn't grow up, and he didn't really grow up like that. He grew up with parents who had these very traditional roles and tasks around the home. And a lot of that fell on our mothers. So if you don't have that conversation, you kind of assume that's how it will be also in your marriage. And that, it looked like it worked out for them. It'll probably work out for us. But you don't know unless you literally have those conversations. So I would say just it's good that you have gone to couples therapy. And I will also say with couples therapy, it's great that you graduated, but I even think you can treat that like primary care. You go to your doctor once a year for an annual checkup. Feel fine. Incorporate that with your couples therapy once or twice a year. Let's just check in, say hello. Maybe something's bubbling up that we didn't even realize, and it might come out in there. Or again, they say, yeah, you guys are doing great. See you next year. I think that we should approach that work that same way.
Yeah, that was actually a beautiful segue. What I was going to ask next, it was kind of like that unlearning, like you touched on it near the tail end of your comment, Jasmine, unlearning certain things. and then relearning new, because the entire topic of today's conversation is motherhood in the modern era.
Yes.
And I always use the team analogy. I did varsity basketball, high school, and college. So like I use that analogy with my wife and say there's 5 players on the team, but it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody wants to win the game,
Know your
right?
person.
Every person's job is to contribute to the team winning. So if I'm the point guard and she's the, I don't know, the center, for example, I can't just sit here and be like, well, it's not my job to, block boards and just try to play defense. And she can't also say, well, it's his job to run the play. Like, we are on the same team and working toward the same goal. So with that being said, like, what certain things have you had to unlearn? We kind of hinted on more traditional roles and then modern roles. We're all now in the workforce, and so you have to unlearn certain even habits that you may pick up at work that don't really play out well at home. What is that experience like where you have to unlearn certain habits and instincts as you step into this, phase of parenthood, motherhood?
Yes, I can start this one. For me, it's been everything. So I appreciate Jasmine's comment about kind of offloading decision making. Because
Yeah.
when you are kind of, lived your whole life alone, didn't have to worry about your partner or another person that you're raising, you were able to make all your decisions kind of unilaterally without
Yeah.
thinking about who else impacts. So my
Yeah.
biggest thing was being more collaborative and having to listen to someone else's perspective who may have grew up differently than me, who might have a different lifestyle to me. My partner's vegan, and that comes with a lot of different compromises too about what we're eating. I eat meat still, but how we raise our child and what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
Even from the fact of the pediatrician gave us a book called Solid Starts, and we were trying to follow that. And that's where you give your child just kind of like real food or real solid
Yeah.
starts.
The
And
solids.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a transition. And
Mhm.
then trying
Mhm.
to tell my parents, hey, we're not only just going to do, all purees, let's try this. So it's been unlearning a lot of different things, and not that any way that we were raised was wrong. It's just different.
Okay. Right.
Trying to
Right.
follow thing, what AAP might tell us. So
Mhm.
I haven't watched TV in months. I miss TV, but trying to follow screen time and wondering,
Yeah.
hey, why can't we sit him in front of a tablet or anything like that? So everything has just been kind of taking the information, having a discussion about what we're going to do, and then kind of making that known to our family or any caregivers. And so that's kind of been the biggest thing for me. And then trying to be receptive to feedback. We're not going to agree on everything, but we both
Mhm.
want the same thing for our child and figuring out what is our path going forward and then communicating that as well. So everything has been on learning for me. I said none of this is easy. And I know your child needs to develop their own lifestyle and personality going forward, but it's just been a constant kind of compromise and figuring out the best way forward in our shared vision for our son.
For me, I think, and this is definitely like the comparison between professional and motherhood, is
Mhm.
being used to making decisions based on a lot of data and literature and precedent. And when you're a mother or a parent, like you don't have a bunch of data. Like this person is unique. There's nobody else like them. You don't know where you can go and find out what this child needs. And between your children, they need different things. I had to get used to more uncertainty because I felt like at work I always had some guideline or article or
Mhm.
physician I could go ask for their
Mhm.
opinion, and I had all that information to help me with making certain decisions and choosing a path. And you really just, this is when I feel like you rely on your faith, a little bit on just your values and what you are trying to build or the type of person you are trying to create, right? Or help grow. Um, and make a decision knowing that you won't know if it's completely the right thing till they're
Yeah.
18, right? You
Yeah.
don't know how to work out.
Yeah.
But you're doing your best and trusting yourself that you are doing the best that you can with the information you have in the moment and getting comfortable with that. So that was a learning because I had not had to do that. I felt like in my own life personally, as a student and then as an early practitioner, I always felt like I had somewhere to go that was going to help me make this decision. And then motherhood and these children come and you're like, there's no guideline, there's no book. Like I just got to go with it, right? And so to me, that was a relearning of how to make decisions and how to stand solid in a decision I've made. when sometimes you are getting comments from parents and aunts and uncles about why would you do it that way, you stand in what you believe is right for what you're trying to do in your family.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a big learning for me.
So I love that we were talking about the unlearning of very unhealthy activities while also incorporating newer activities that have shown better results. Um, Definitely. So, Ashley, to your point, it's funny you mentioned the screen time. So, my mother banned TV during school. Like, I could not watch TV at all.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I always thought, like, this seems kind of strange,
Yeah.
usual. And even some of her older family members told me later as an adult, like this was very interesting for her to do
Mm-hmm.
because she was watching TV as a kid during the weekday, and you're not. But we followed
Mm.
her rules because you were her child.
Yeah.
Now looking forward, X amount of years later, being an engineer like Ben and understanding my analytical mindset and my ability to work through and disseminate information in such a regimented fashion and being able to process things over long periods of time with a good attention to detail and not being easily distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we lost him.
Oh, we lost him. He was getting good. I
Mm-hmm.
You're
think I know
done.
where he was going with that.
Yeah. And it, so just to kind of hear that you're doing the same thing kind of warms my heart a little bit because it's like, I know the kid, I know he's going to be in great hands. Like, I know that it's going to pay dividends for him in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, as we talk about the future and raising children and instituting certain protocols, I want to talk more so about kind of the reality of the world that we raise these children in. So, how do you, and this question is posed to the both of you, how do you raise children who are proud of who they are without shielding them so much that they're unprepared for what they'll face?
That's a good one. I ask myself that every day. I might have to answer that when they're done.
Okay. Okay.
I have to plug in my computer. Sorry. You want to go first, Ashley, or you?
Um, yeah, with the lens again, I'm 364 days old, so I don't really know what knows what's going on. But I can say in my professional life, and staying within the C3 guidelines, but I am politically involved. And I take my son with me. I hosted an event once, well, recently for someone running for governor, and he was there with
Mm-hmm.
me, so that he
Mm-hmm.
could see that. And so whenever he grows up, or even if you go forward, he's going to see that. Hopefully, he'll see and appreciate that he was, involved in the change. That the reason why I'm doing anything that I'm doing, whether that's civically, with voter education, whether that is volunteering on a board, it was all for the advancement of people just like him. So the work I do at Kennesaw State when I was president of Black Alumni Society is to help Black students. It's the Alumni Association now to help all students, but the goal is for higher education. So he can see
Mm-hmm.
volunteers about higher education. When I'm involved with Grady and professionals, I care much about, and I know got Wellstar on here, much about healthcare and that setting those boundaries. I took him to a Move for Grady 5K with me, which I walked with him, so you can see that and experience that. So for me, it's been kind of what I can do by embedding him into my civic life and him seeing that I'm trying to create change from where I can, and that that's just going to be a staple of what our family does. So you might not want to do this 5K with me, but this is why we're doing this cause. You might wonder why is mom taking me to another board meeting? Well, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about this cause. So that is where I am right
Me
now.
too.
At least I know it can change. I've seen people bring kids to places that the kid didn't want to be there, but in hindsight, they might realize why is my mom taking me here? What was this
Mm-hmm.
about? And that's kind of how I'm approaching this. Is that there's always going to be a fight. It's unfortunate. The wins that we had, weren't that long ago. Our parents lived through it. But I want them to be able to answer that question about what did my mom do, what did my parents do during this time, and I can show that that's what I'm doing, and hopefully he will continue that legacy too.
So Ashley, did you bring him to the 5K with you, like with the stroller? Did you like
Yep,
push him
I
with
bought a
the?
jogging stroller just
Oh,
for
that's
that.
wonderful. We love that.
And he tried to
Yeah.
We
get up
love
every
that.
mile. I'm like, nope, we
Yeah.
gotta get
So he
through this.
so he ran the 5K with you. That's what I'm hearing. He
Yes,
ran it
his
too.
first
Yeah, there you
5K.
go. Love that.
Listen, we love the embodiment of health and wellness too. We love that.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Absolutely.
Um, so, what I've done with my children is trying to really instill them the importance of community, and what that can look like, whether that's church community or that is your friend group. But also, I also appreciate professional and social societies and organizations like the 100 Black Men. So, my son is a graduate, I guess, of the Men of Tomorrow 100 Black
Hmm.
Men program.
Shout out to
And
Avery Jones,
yeah.
man. That's great. Our scholar.
Yes, he's the first beneficiary of the Emerging 100
Hmm.
collegiate scholarship. So thank you so much, you all, for that.
Absolutely.
There were many Saturdays he didn't really want to get up and go to the 100 Black Men meeting
I believe
sometimes.
it.
And
Yeah.
a lot of that was because he played football. Fridays
Hmm.
were long nights and he didn't want to
Hmm.
get up on a Saturday, and I understood that. But I also tried to help him understand why I really wanted him to be a part of that organization, for the reinforcement of certain values, for the conversations I know that you all were having with the children, about what it looks like to be a Black man,
Hmm.
a Black youth, and then a Black man, right? And
Hmm.
what kinds of things and they can expect to experience and how they can respond. Because I think that that is really what we are kind of going through now. I see that with my son. They have been taught certain things in school, particularly this is a post-racial
Hmm.
society, but now what we're living through now doesn't look so post-racial, right? So there's trying to understand and reconcile certain things that they're not going to help you do that at school. So that's where not only your parents but your community and these different organizations that you're a part of are helping you understand your place in society, how you are going to fit, and what you can,
Hmm.
to your point, civically, to bring about change or to make this a more livable society for you and people that look like you. And so, I did, that's the organization I had my son a part of, and then my daughter is in other organizations, Delta Sigma Theta, related organizations. So
Gotcha.
I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and so she will hopefully be joining their team group, hopefully in the fall.
Hmm.
Well, they will have similar conversations. And then one thing that we've also tried to do is whenever we're traveling with our children, is look for those opportunities, to look at legacy and history, both
Hmm.
African American, but also when we're traveling abroad, looking at, is there a connection between West Africa and France, or
Hmm.
the lived experience of Black people in London. We recently did
Hmm.
some travel. And so I think that's really important so that they see us everywhere we go and how we have really committed or contributed to the development of not just American culture, but culture in other countries as well.
Wow. Nelson, you mind if I add on to this? Is that all right?
Yeah, certainly.
Oh.
Go ahead and add on to it because you started. I'm sorry if I dropped off a little bit.
Mhm.
Go ahead and add on to it because
Uh-oh. Yeah, I'll add in, and I say this, and I'll actually speak for my wife in this moment because we talk about this so often. Um, I would actually challenge the question in the terms of the verbiage of using having your children being proud of you. We don't we shoot past pride. We shoot all the way to, are they just, in fact, we're really starting very simple. Are they growing up in an environment that they understand fully who they are and where they come from? Like, that's bare bones. So quick history lesson about me. My family is from West Indies. My wife is from Trinidad. My family's from Jamaica. I'm the first American born in my family. And so with that, um, obviously I'm the president of my chapter. And so Nelson could even tell you, I bring my sons to chapter meetings sometimes. Sometimes it's just one of them. Sometimes it's both of them. Sometimes I bring the whole crew is just sitting in the back chilling, because and you both touched on it. It's that environment. Like, it's beautiful to say, yo, my son is with me, my infant son. I'm gonna put him in the little jogger stroller, and we're gonna run this 5K together. That's an experience that, even though he may not be old enough to fully be aware of what's happening, it's still in his consciousness. It's still registered that he was there with you. That bonding moment still happens. So my sons are my legacy. And so for me, it's actually a reminder of the work that I do when sometimes my brothers be getting me frustrated sometimes, and we're in chapter meetings. I'm mentoring my peers, right? Because these are my peers that I also have to lead, and it can be frustrating. But I look at my sons and I realize this is why I'm here. And when they see that, we said it earlier, there is a certain level of respect that it's not as if I didn't have kids, they wouldn't respect me. But I can speak for my brothers and say, I appreciate the respect they give me for the simple fact they know how young I am. I'm 29 years old with 2 children. And so a lot of them are older than me, and they will come to me for some advice. And I appreciate that experience because that reminds me of the disposition I am in. And so to really answer this question of, you know, having your children being proud of you, right? And not so much that they're unprepared. I would also challenge the preparedness. We also talk about readiness versus preparation in our household. And so the rule is you'll never be ready for anything. Like, you cannot be infinitely ready for infinite possibilities. It's just not possible. But you can be prepared to face what may come your way. Right. And I know it's kind of playing semantics because readiness and preparation, they technically mean the same thing, but we use preparation in terms of we're not trying to find every single scenario that we can prepare and shield our children from. We are simply prepared and instilling in them the tools and the mindset because they know who they are, because they've gone with dad to work. They just say, I'm going to work when I bring them, because they go with mom to certain events that she has. They can see and understand where they come from, and that is ingrained in who they are. So that was just my little anecdote of that. Like, I really appreciate that question, but I would expand it to talk about legacy, preparation, and understanding of who you are.
So I love that we're having this synergy in terms of our reasons why, right? Why we put our children into certain programs, foundational programs that teach them the certain character building skills, those values, those tenets, those personality or understandings between different people, those social skills. Racial society. I hope you can hear me. I know I probably just dropped out. Okay, I'll say this really quick. We're raising kids in the era of social media, constant news cycles, and very visible racial tension. How do you have honest conversations with your children without stealing their sense of safety? I know this one is a little bit of a doozy, and I think we're going to close out on this one. This one is a very multi-layered question.
Mm-hmm.
And we can repeat it.
I can repeat it if you like.
Okay.
Okay. So we're raising kids in an era of social media, constant news cycles, and very visible racial tension. How do you have honest conversations with your children without stealing their sense of safety?
So I can start. I think this is a very difficult challenge for all parents. And I think it's, trying to have the conversation be appropriate for their age, right? So even though my kids are, fairly close in age, 4 years apart, there's still a difference there. Like what Avery's, the questions and the conversations we're having are slightly different from what I'm having with her. And that's how I'm building safety, not to like cause her to spiral into some anxiety that she doesn't need to worry about because she's not an adult yet, right? But what with social media in particular, what I'm really trying to help them do is build a level or an ability to discern not just what's real and what's not, because that's almost impossible, but to recognize when something is being put in front of you that's, for lack of a better term, like clickbait. Like, are they using very sensational terms? Are these videos like really outlandish? Is that really what journalism looks like? If you're thinking you're listening to something that is credible, this is a way to kind of critique this. And then also, like, what is this news organization? Is this a CNN or USA Today or more credible things versus New England Journal, or not New England Journal, New York Times, right? Versus TMZ, right? So I'm trying to help build that skill for them of being able to discern where
it's critical thinking.
Correctly, and then the critical thinking layer of yours. So what did you learn, right? So this is where it goes back to, where are they? So obviously they do begin learning, world history and US history and things in middle school, and it goes
Mm-hmm.
to a certain level. And then
Mm-hmm.
they get into AP US history, AP
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's like, so now what do you think about some of the same things you learned in middle school, but what was the difference now that the
Yep.
discussion
A
was in
lot
AP?
more depth.
And
It's a lot
now,
more depth.
yes, and now can you use that as your a different changing your lens, making it a little bit more clear on when you are evaluating things that you're hearing and learning. So that's kind of the conversation I've had with them. And recently it's just become so more important to really do that because of just I just see how much information is getting thrown at them, that I did not have to deal with myself at that age.
Ashley, what about you?
So he's not looking at social media just yet, no, but it's a little bit different for me. But I can give an example. I guess I hosted a convention for an organization I'm part of called New Leaders Council a couple of years ago. And this is kind of not answering the question directly, but just giving an example about something I learned. And we actually had Ambassador Andrew Young's daughter, Andrea, come speak. And we didn't
Mm-hmm.
actually ask her, well, we asked her a lot of questions, but one of the things that we asked her is like, how did you all find joy? Like, your dad is a civil rights leader. He
Wow.
is going through different things.
Yeah.
But you had to have a normal childhood somehow. And so she actually said, I remember, my dad hosting cookouts. I remember them doing
Mm-hmm.
all these things, even in the backdrop of this really painful time. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of bring those stories with me when I'm thinking about the future, even, in the era of social media, that you are going to go through these things, that we're not trying to shield you from it, but also how do we kind of find that balance? Like, they had
Mm-hmm.
to look at pictures of him. Okay, you might find him eating dinner one night. You might find him laughing in the midst of all these different things happening. Also have kind of another funny story. I have a friend, and her dad was the youngest freedom rider. They did not know he was a freedom rider until a news reporter called them, like many years later. I think my
Wow.
friend might have been in high school or something like that. So that is something that he literally had shielded his family from almost
Mm-hmm.
his entire life, and that's also when his wife found out. But he was still part of the movement, doing all these different things. So I kind of take those lessons away from it. Said, don't not answering directly if we're not involved with social media, but in the midst of dark times, that you can still try to find joy in the movement, in the work. That's kind of the said. It's not, I don't want to call it beautiful, but the beautiful part of it is that we are resilient people. We've been here before, and we can learn. We have the luxury of being in Atlanta. We can learn from different civil rights leaders. And that's kind of what I would kind of say for my son. I'm not shielding you from it, but even though we might be going to a march today or might be protesting, you still might get some ice cream later, and you still might try to still find joy, because that's the only way, if you take care of yourself and your well-being, that we're going to get through
Yeah.
anything that we're going through, no matter what time we're in.
So we still exist at the end of the day. We're still humans. Oh, that was beautiful. I think Nelson, I wanted to really ask this question to round things out
That's
as
fine.
we
Go
close,
ahead.
right? And it's important for us to touch on this is, with all this being said, what is the one thing that every mother watching this should leave with, in terms of believing in her capabilities and believing in herself and her future selves and those who come after her? What is the one thing that you would share?
I would share to give yourself grace, and know that you will make some mistakes, right? We all make mistakes as mothers, and fathers, and to just know that you can continue every day to try to repair if the conversation didn't go so well, or a decision you made, or a punishment you gave, you felt maybe that was a little bit rough, right? You have the opportunity to have another conversation with your child, and repair is always an option if needed. um, and that at the end of the day, typically your children are going to at some point realize, yes, my mother was just a human being, just as I am. It may
Mm-hmm.
take a while, right? I think that's how I feel. I can look back at it now, and some things that my mom did or said, and I, in the moment, just thought, she's a horrible person, right? Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I did get to a point in age where I could say my mom is a human being, and I think that our children are going to say the same thing about us. And she did the best that she could, and
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully, your children are going to know that you did whatever you did with love, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we have to turn around and give that grace and that love to ourselves, and know that we are doing our best.
Love that.
Yeah, for me, I would say kind of find your own path. Motherhood doesn't look the same for everyone. Everyone doesn't have the same resources. Everyone doesn't have the same lifestyle. So you really have to find out what works best for you. I had fortunate opportunity that one of my really good friends, he has always talked about being balanced. And so I was able to kind of learn about how am I still going to be involved with different leadership organizations and still be involved with the public the way I am as a mom. And she was able to really embody that for me. So I was kind of model a lot of my motherhood after her about bringing said, if you all do, bringing your son's meetings or figuring out what that balance looks like. Maybe it's not girls' night everyone anymore. Maybe it's girls' night plus my 1 year old with us. But just figuring out what that looks like for you. I think a lot of times people try to project what motherhood looks like based on
Hmm.
their experiences, which is their own truth. But you're going to have your own way, your own lifestyle of doing things. And I'm glad Jasmine mentioned you're going to make mistakes because no one's done this before. No one's raised your child before except for you. So you're just learning as you go, but just being remember to stay authentic to yourself, find your own path, and there's only going to be one mom like you. So do what's best for you and your family, and don't be afraid to grow and learn from whatever mistakes and opportunities you make along the way.
I love the exercise of grace, knowing that we're doing it
Hmm.
for the first time and we're still figuring it out. So it's okay. And also having the space to heal said relationship. Maybe
Hmm.
we're a little too strong in that respect. And so we might need to walk it back. But understanding the core concept that we are human. We can make mistakes, but we learn from them. And I think that was an excellent point to end that wonderful, very enlightening conversation with the both of you, Ashley and Jasmine. I think I speak for myself, but maybe possibly for Ben, that we learned a lot from your lived experiences and you describing how you navigate motherhood, your career, and also just setting up healthy boundaries of being able to pour into yourself while also maintaining a great household. So I really want to applaud the two of you all and thank you
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
giving us that wonderful hours worth of time, nuggets, golden nuggets of knowledge that you just kind of shared with us. Before we leave, for anybody watching, I want to definitely say this shouldn't be the only conversation we have on this kind of topic, the intersectionality of motherhood, career, education, and health and wellness. So definitely keep the conversation going in your households. And if you want to connect with us, you can connect with us on our social media or visit us at www.e100northmetro.org. And please join us for our next webinar. And last but not least, if you would like to possibly share or donate to any of our causes, such as the scholarship that Jasmine Jones just talked about that her son received, you can find that here under our Linktree QR code and give it a scan and donate to our Give Butter link as well as any other initiatives that we have. And I just want to say thank you for spending this time today to listen to our two wonderful speakers, Jasmine Jones and Ashley Nealy, and we are signing off. Thank you, and thank you.